This is Nick Baisley from FilmSnobbery, and I am here. We're still covering Dances with Films with filmmaker J.C. Schroder, director of Forever's End. How you doing?
I am doing great.
All right, we got through the first question. That was easy, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about Forever's End.
Forever's End is a post-apocalyptic psychological thriller. It kind of takes place 6 years after the world has ended, out in the middle of nowhere, and it's a very character-driven kind of multi-genre movie.
You wrote it as well?
I did. I wrote, directed, produced, and a few other things.
As far as I can remember, next week will be 6 years to the day the world ended. And my heart stopped beating. I haven't seen anyone, spoken to anyone, touched anyone since then.
This is wrong, and you know it.
You don't know that.
You don't throw him out, I will. You don't know anything about him. What happens if he finds out?
What is he doing?
Watching us. Watch him.
It's okay.
It's not okay! What has he done to you?
How very indie of you. Why did you decide to take on so much, or was it out of necessity, or was it because you wanted to have control of the final output, or was it just because why not? It was something to do at the time.
Good question, although I think the answer is pretty easy. Didn't really have a choice. No, this was definitely an indie film. It was a micro-budget film, and because of that, out of necessity, we had a very small crew. And so taking on multiple jobs was really the only way to make it work for the budget that we had. That being said, I love doing things. I shot the movie as well. I was a cinematographer on it. And that kind of thing is really fun for me. If I had had other options, I certainly would have hired a full crew to do it just to ease the workload a bit. But it was a fantastic experience.
And what's your background in regards to doing any of this? Did you already know when you got the camera how to do more than just turn it on and hit record, or did you have a background in directing, producing, or working with actors in general, or anything like that?
Yes, actually, my background, I started in music, in live entertainment. And then that was about 12, 13 years ago now. I've been running my own production company, which we kind of moved over from the live entertainment realm to film, TV, video production about 6 or 7 years ago. So I've actually been producing and shooting music videos and commercials and client-based stuff for several years. So I have done directing for short subject things like music videos and commercials for quite a while. And that being said, this was my feature directorial debut, and it was kind of a movie I wanted to make to prove, that I could jump from one realm to another.
Well, I can imagine that doing corporate work is going to be different than doing, narrative feature work anyway. But did you decide to? Were there any shorts that you did in between that where you decided I want to try, doing this and see if it works, and or not only from a camera directing or producing perspective, but also even from like, I want to try this effect or I want to try this that. So let's do a test, on this by doing a short or doing some test footage or whatever. Like, what was your approach beforehand?
I have shot, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 short films prior to this. Most of them, again, were in, going through college and things like that.
Shit.
That's all right.
All right.
We'll start that over.
Yeah.
I have shot a number of shorts, probably 6 or 7 prior to this, the first of which I will never show anyone. They're very bad, and that's okay. It's a learning experience. But prior to switching over from the live realm to kind of the video production realm, I did a lot of test shoots. We did a lot of short subject stuff, even a lot of commercials for local businesses as opposed to stuff like on a national scale. And from that, it's a learning curve. Basically, what I did is I had designed these different short films to focus on specific elements of production. I do have a degree in broadcast production from Miami University of Ohio, so I do have some formal training as well. But they always say, the best way to learn is by doing.
Sure.
So what I did is I actually wrote specific short films. I wrote, produced, and directed all of them. But what I did is focus each one on a specific production element. The first one I focused on writing, see if I could actually write a good story that was coherent and made sense and made logic. The second one I focused on acting. Didn't really care so much about the visual elements or even the audio in it. The focus was to be able to work with actors. I even took a couple acting classes to learn how to do that. I'm certainly not an actor and have no interest in acting, but I wanted to know how to work with actors and how to be able to relate to actors on that kind of level. And then next one was focus on cinematography and so on and so forth. So it's a learning curve. I mean, the whole goal was to screw up enough times until I got to a point where I was comfortable enough to step into the director's chair on a feature. And I've produced other independent features, but this is the first time directing.
What from film school till now, what is, or broadcast school, I guess we'll call it that. What is the one thing that they didn't teach you that even now, having made the transition from live entertainment to corporate work or work for hire till now feature film directing, what's the one thing you do wish, like, man, they really should have warned me about this, either whether it's from industry or technical or whatever?
That's a loaded question. I think that most people in film school, they like to teach you the details. They like to teach you the terminology. They like to teach you how to turn a camera on and off. What they don't teach you is how the industry actually works. There's a lot of politics that are involved in the industry, and there's just a lot of details. I mean, it's a relationship-based industry. That's just the way that it is. And I wish that when I was going through school, several things. First off, that they had taught more of how to get your first jobs, how to break into the industry. Now, I was lucky to the point where I founded a film festival in Cincinnati. It's now the Cincinnati Film Festival. I no longer work for it, but because I kind of crossed that bridge from the live event spectrum to the film spectrum, it kind of made logical sense. Because of that, I had a certain benefit that when I finally moved out to Los Angeles, I already knew some people. I knew a bunch of directors. I knew a bunch of people that had actually worked on films that had screened at our festival. I even knew some people at the executive level at some studios because we had played films, opening and closing night films like that at our fest. So that was a certain benefit, but I kind of created that for myself that didn't exist in a film school world. And from that, I kind of learned both by screwing up and just by talking to people and people that had graduated before me and, alumni and stuff like that of the university, really how to work with people in the business. Because something that you learn on a set, on a set with a bunch of students where there's only maybe 1 or 2 professionals that are teaching the class is absolutely nothing like what it's like to work on a professional set in Hollywood. And to work with both union and non-union crews and all of the details and all of the specifics that go hand in hand with that. And I think the only way to really learn that, the reason they don't teach that, is it's almost impossible to teach without just doing it. You know what I mean? I would say I probably learned more on my first 2 or 3 professional sets, than I probably ever learned in film school. Now, college has its own benefits as far as, actually getting a degree and a full rounded education above and beyond that. But, when I sat on my first professional set, in LA as a PA, I learned more in those 3 or 4 days working on that one shoot than I probably learned in 3 or 4 years of film school.
Let's talk. I believe it. I mean, I really do. Let's talk film festivals for a second, though. Now, having been someone that has founded a film festival, and now is a filmmaker who is touring the circuit with Forever's End, go see it. First of all, what were some of the challenges and misconceptions you might have had when you started your film festival, and what did you kind of also learn that you're using now on the festival circuit? Whether it's from talking to other filmmakers or whether it's from your own experiences behind the scenes. I mean, because obviously you've seen behind the curtain. The politics. There are tricks and other things that happen to put on an event that is, not only pleasing for audiences, but pleasing for filmmakers, pleasing for sponsors, pleasing for everybody involved. Typically not you, but you know how it is. So take all of that information, digest it, make it funny, and go.
Make it funny. I love that requirement. Well, I think the first thing that I would say is that it is a really unique experience. It's a unique. I think I probably have a unique take on things because I'm coming from both sides of the equation. It's weird because as a kind of starting out on the film festival side of things, you're essentially acting as not only a programmer, but in a certain sense, you are essentially acting as from the distribution aspect. You are literally picking through thousands of submissions in most cases to find, that select few, and sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's, maybe even up to 100. But the best of the best that you then are going to show, but whether it's at your festival or in our case, we even had distribution attached to our festival as well. So we were literally picking films that would essentially get distributed, or at least offers. And when you're coming from that side of things, your view, your outlook on it is completely different than when you're coming at it from a filmmaker's perspective. I think that the best film festivals are run by filmmakers. I think that's just the way that it is, because they understand what a filmmaker goes through, even just to send a movie to a festival, to get to the point of having a completed film that they can send to a festival, and then what it means to them when they're rejected, or what it means to them when they're accepted, and what it means to put on that kind of event that they have put all of their time and effort to going to, in most cases, years of their lives invested in this one movie, and then finally get in. So starting from a film festival side of things, it's a completely different perspective. From a film festival side of things, our view is we're looking for the best quality material that accomplishes a number of different jobs from our view. Number one thing is that most film festivals are nonprofit, and as nonprofits, they have to pay their bills. I mean, you have to break even at the very least. Very few film festivals actually make money. People don't run film festivals to make money.
Right.
Well, there's one or two out there, but I'm not going to go into that.
You mean some that end with dance, begin with sun, and maybe some other foreign ones, particularly maybe on the French Riviera ish, just throwing out.
Yeah, I would say most of the top tier festivals, and I'm not going to place them by name, but most of the top tier festivals, and even some of the smaller ones, you have to pay really close attention when you're submitting, and I'll get into that in a second. This is not a quick answer. You asked a very loaded question, so I'm sorry about that. You can edit whatever you like.
No, this is all it's gold, Jerry, gold. No.
Anyway, no. That being said, there are a number of festivals that literally are their sole purpose is to make money, and some of them are even created by people whose sole purpose is to put money in their own pockets. True. Which is sad, but it's the truth. And you need to do your research before you submit to any film festival. That's the first thing I would say. But going back to that's a film festival submitting to film festival answer as a filmmaker. Let me answer it as from a former festival director's standpoint first. From my perspective, from the festival that I was trying to create a festival that was open and inviting to filmmakers just as much as it was beneficial to filmmakers in the long run. And that being said, I mean, we never made any money. We got lucky when we broke even, which is, I think, where most film festivals stand. Mm-hmm. But what you have, your struggle from a programmer's standpoint and I've also programmed for 3 or 4 different film festivals in addition to running this one. So from a programmer's standpoint, your struggle is to find material that's not only quality, like stuff that you know your audiences are going to want, but it's also stuff that your specific region is actually going to be interested in. Right. Because even though we may have, 150 fantastic films that we receive every year, they're not all going to reach the audience in our specific area. And in our case, everybody was working for free. Nobody got a paycheck ever. I mean, we had a crew of like a dozen interns and 4 or 5 people on staff, and nobody was paid. They were all working in their free time, to pull off this festival. We got a great response from that. It was founded, and by our second or third year, we had thousands of attendees, and we were, Movie Maker magazine listed us as one of their top 25 worth the entry fee that they may do every year, which was fantastic for us. Sure. It was wonderful. But one of those things that you struggle with every year is what is the balance between quality films and films that will reach your specific audience, and even trying to integrate that with some films that do have notable stars so that you can actually pay your bills. Our struggle with that, and I think this is what most film festivals struggle with, is the balance between screening actual indie films, actual films that are produced low budget, that are trying to help new filmmakers, versus those films that people call independent films that are star-studded. Yeah. And I think one of the hardest things for an independent filmmaker is picking those festivals that actually either have that balance or go one way or the other, knowing where you fit best. Because most film festivals nowadays, sad as it is, if you don't have a star in a movie, they don't care. Mm-hmm. And
it's stars.
It's frustrating.
It's stars. It's premiere status. It's sometimes it doesn't even matter. Regardless, there are a couple festivals out there that by the time your submission even goes in, even on the earliest of bird deadlines, that festival's already been selected. You know what I mean? From outside of submissions. We won't mention any names, but
Well, let's talk about now. Let's talk about how do you get into a film festival as a filmmaker? I think there are a lot of misconceptions. I think the first thing that I would say, from being on both sides of this equation, and I have taken some of my short films to film festivals. This is obviously the first feature that I've dealt with inside and out, and it's a very new experience. Being on the complete other side of the equation.
Well, with features too, I mean, there's a little more limiting factor of it as well. There's only so many spots for features as opposed to shorts, which there's usually more spots of in most film festivals as well.
Let's start with shorts first, because actually that's kind of it's an interesting thing. Some of the best ways to get into film festivals, I would say the first way to approach a film festival is make sure you do your research first. Do your research before you submit to anything, before you spend your money on entry fees, before you spend hundreds of dollars, and it can add up to thousands of dollars just on entry fees to festivals. There's so many, there's thousands and thousands of them in the world. Most of them aren't worth submitting to. It's just the way that it is. But if you don't do your research, you don't know that. Talk to people who sent to film festivals. Look on their websites. See what films they've played in past years. Have they all been star-studded? If you're trying to submit your feature that has no stars in it to a festival that only plays movies with stars in it, or has that 1 or 2 odd feature out that doesn't, out of 12 that they program, what's the likelihood you're going to get in? Mm-hmm. Don't waste your time on it.
Shotgun approach doesn't work.
No, don't waste your time on it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth your money. It's not worth your time. And the festival, in most cases, isn't going to care. They may watch it, but they're going to go, all right, well, there's no stars in this. They're trying to. Now, don't get me wrong. Not all festivals do that on purpose. Right. Some of them. One thing I actually love about the Toronto Film Festival, and this is 2-year-old information, but I actually got to speak with the director of the Toronto Film Festival, who was also the former head of what do they call it? Creative development, the actual head of programming for the festival before that. And one of the things that he told me is they actually limit their studio premieres, star-driven stuff to 4 or 5 films every year. And they actually studios get upset at them because so many people want to use the clout of the Toronto Film Festival to premiere their movies, and as soon as they got their 5, they cut it off so that they can still select all the rest of the festival is actual independent films.
And from what I understand, Toronto too, because of the audience of that festival, they always say take the reactions at Toronto and kind of you have to almost take 20% of that reaction off because they're an overly enthusiastic Canadian crowd, which I think a lot of, especially I could see the studios who are looking for those good early reviews and stuff like that will probably be like, well, we're going to go and we're going to get a glowing review most likely off the bat, or at least we'll be able to get good audience snippet, pull quotes and stuff from, because of those kind of things. And then that's the other thing too. I mean, from your perspective as a film festival programmer, it must be tough as well, because those studio films or the star-driven films also equal revenue, most likely, because those are people that are in those movies that people recognize and that people will sit and watch.
That's exactly right. Those are the kind of movies that fill theaters. Those are the kind of movies that sell seats. Those are the kind of movies that bring new people out to the festival that wouldn't likely have come to see it otherwise. Because these are films, unreleased movies. They haven't come out yet. They're exclusives, you know what I mean, to the region at least. And that's the frustration. I think that's kind of the tug and the balance that you struggle with as a programmer, and especially as a director of a festival, is to find that balance. That's what we tried to do with the Oxford International Film Festival is the name of the festival before it changed ownership and when I was running it. And that's what was our goal, was to get those 3 or 4 films every year that would bring in audiences, that people who'd never been to a festival before, especially with a young festival, to bring in get audiences in the door and then get them excited about all these new films that are just as amazing, but may not have that kind of star-driven pull that would get them as excited to walk in the door. But as soon as you get them in the door and they're meeting all the filmmakers that are there and they're getting all excited about the movies, they come back and they watch others. So our goal is, you have to create that balance. I think what I love about Toronto is that they have found their balance and they set it, you know what I mean? They have that set number. All the stuff that you hear about in the news from the Toronto Film Festival is all about these big star-driven world premieres, right? But what they're actually doing is they're drawing these thousands of people in to a festival that may have never heard of it before, and then they come and see other movies.
Do you kind of feel that is the same argument that could be said for Kickstarter, where you have now more star-driven projects that are directing more people, say, instead of just, my friends and family, or media family, but then I also, now my grandmother might have heard of Kickstarter, or, my cousin's uncle's dad's wife. I don't know how any of that would make sense, but now she's heard of Kickstarter over in a country that's not US, UK, Canada, or something like that, because she happens to be a fan of Zach Braff, or used to watch Veronica Mars or something like that.
Kickstarter is an interesting beast. Kickstarter and Indiegogo both, and the reason I say that is that I think it's a wonderful tool for independent filmmakers to actually get movies funded. At the same time, it's kind of it's almost like a backwards way to think about it. And the reason I say that is that a lot of the films that get the kind of funding that they really need to make a movie, you're talking the tens of thousands of dollars plus. And I'm not going into the stuff like Veronica Mars and the Zach Braff's sequel to Garden State, but I mean you're talking millions. But even the tens of thousands of dollars range, you almost already have to have a built-in fan base, whether it's a built-in fan base for yourself or for your actors. They don't have to be stars necessarily, but if you don't already have 2,000-3,000 fans on Facebook, or friends or whatever, right? Or your combined actors and crew don't all have 1,000 each, the likelihood of you actually reaching your goal of $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 even to create a low budget an independent film is not very high. That's sad. It's frustrating, but that's actually exactly what happened to us. And we kind of knew it going into it, but we figured, what the heck? Most people don't know this, but Forever's End was actually a Kickstarter film, and it's technically a failed Kickstarter film, which is really hilarious. But this is a really interesting tool, I think. Without addressing where kind of celebrities are using Kickstarter, because I haven't really made up my mind there quite yet as to whether I really like that idea or not. I love that they're able to make films on their own accord and be able to do it the way that they want to do it and have full creative freedom. I love that concept, but I'm also just as frustrated about it because they're basically getting money from people who could potentially invest in a movie that I want to make, or a movie that somebody who actually needs the money wants to make. Zach Braff could have had his same movie funded 6 times. Actually, he even said in his video on Kickstarter that he had already had offers to get that movie funded 4 or 5 different times, but he turned it down because he wanted more creative control. That to me is actually very frustrating, because that means that all those millions of dollars that are now going to his project, what about my project that I wanted to fund for $50,000? You know what I mean? Millions of dollars from the same people who have the same funding pool are doing that. On the flip side, it is true, though. He's creating a lot more attention to Kickstarter that didn't exist before. So in the long run, maybe it is more beneficial. But I don't know that it's necessarily a good start a good what's the word I'm looking for? Precedent to create with stars all going to Kickstarter to fund their films, because then all of a sudden people are just going to Kickstarter to be involved in stars movies.
Right.
It suddenly goes backwards on the whole purpose of why Kickstarter was started to begin with, which is to help new entrepreneurs fund new projects.
I kind of feel at this point, though, that that means that there will be, if there's going to be one, that's more star-driven, the Sundance or the Cannes of crowdfunding, then there should be a Cincinnati or Oxford Film Festival or a whatever version of that as well. Getting, kind of segueing that back to film festivals for a second, and also, but keeping in the vein of, say, marketing. Sponsors are another big thing of film festivals as well, and having to kowtow to that. It's kind of the other point of the triangle: audiences, filmmakers, sponsors, and just marketing in general. Do you find that having marketed for a film festival also really enabled you to more effectively market for your film on the festival circuit, because you kind of, again, knew the tricks?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent that's definitely true. One of the biggest things that I think most filmmakers or new filmmakers who haven't screened movies at film festivals in the past don't really understand is the marketing aspect of a film festival. I think a lot of filmmakers have some kind of not necessarily accurate notion that once they get into a film festival, their job is done. Mm-hmm. It's weird, because it's the first time I get this from all of first-time filmmakers that submit to film festivals. They assume that as soon as they get into a film festival, the festival does its own marketing, and they do, and then that's it. They get to sit back, they get to show up to their screening, and it's going to be a full house, and their job is done. It's exactly the opposite. The job of a film festival is to market the film festival. The job of the filmmaker is to of the film festival is to get as many people to the festival as physically possible.
Right.
The job of the filmmaker is to get people to see their movie. So their job is not done, quite on the contrary. If they want people to actually fill their screening, if they actually want to sell screenings, they need to market. They need to market to whatever the local people are. Whether it's the local television, radio, even go out on the streets. Filmmakers will literally go out on the streets in front of theaters and hand out cards to people. They print off their own little, 4x5 cards and with their movie information on it and their screening times on the back, and they're selling their movie to individual people to try to get people into their movie, to fill their screenings and get a full house, get people excited about it. Most film festivals will actually screen their movie more than once. So once people see it once, they get all excited about it, and they buzz. It creates buzz. One of the great things about that, though, is that if you do it well, and it's really hard to do, it's a lot of work. Every single film festival is a ton of work from a filmmaker's standpoint, and if you don't attend the festival, you might as well not show there. It's a reality of it, because the filmmakers that attend the festivals, those are the people that have all the full screenings, and those are the people that are actually getting awards. And part of that's politics. Part of that just has to do with the fact that you're creating a presence. You're creating you're marketing your movie where it didn't exist before. It's not just in a program and somebody reads through it once and goes, that might be interesting.
And not even just, if you can't make it as a director, but if you have a star that can go, a producer, or someone to represent, a warm body in the seat, as it were.
Yeah, anybody you can send to represent the film and to promote the film and to get people excited about the film before, during, after, during your next screenings throughout the week. I think that is extremely important, and it's something that a lot of filmmakers miss. The same thing like having promotional materials, having a press list, actually going out and sending press releases out for every film festival you go to the local press.
Sitting down with the press and doing an interview.
Whatever you can do to promote your film. And I think a lot of people think that's a lot of work. You don't necessarily make money from festivals. Most festivals don't have any kind of return. But the return for a filmmaker for festivals, mm-hmm. and if you pick your festivals well, festivals that are worthwhile, that actually have some clout and some push, so even some notoriety within the industry, and many of them do, even new young festivals, if you pick them well, they will have a significant return for you as a filmmaker and for you as a film. Not only do you get that fancy little, official selection or even award winner from the festival, but you can also, you're literally building your audience base. Every festival you go to, every person that's in a seat, every person even hears about your movie and passes it on to the next person. Every new like on your Facebook page, Facebook's films page, every new Twitter follower, everything that you do, every festival you go to, you're building your fan base. So when you do get to the point, whether you end up having to self-distribute or you get picked up by a distributor, you have now built a base that didn't exist. And if you play that more than one festival, or what most films try to do is play it dozens, if not 20, 30 of them, across the country, if not across the world, you now have an entire fan base that didn't exist before. So when you do release your film, all of a sudden there are people already interested in it, that are already passing it on. When it pops up on Netflix, they share it with their friends, they share it with their family, and it's not just you and the people that made the movie anymore. All that marketing work is building towards something bigger, and it helps you in the long run.
All that said, what made you feel like you were that Dances with Films was a festival that you wanted to screen Forever's End at?
Couple of things. First of all, it came highly recommended to me. A friend of mine, it's actually been a friend of mine for years, recommended to me. The guy's name is John Putsch. And he's a fantastic filmmaker who has actually done a lot of television work. And that being said, he wanted to make his own low-budget movies just the way that he wanted to do it. And he screened several of his films at Dances with Films over the past few years, and he recommended it. He said, well, you know, there's a dozen different festivals in LA, but Dances with Films will actually play, you know, movies that are quality independent film that are not star-driven. And the frustrating thing is that there are actually a number of fantastic festivals in Los Angeles, especially in the Los Angeles area. But the likelihood of getting into, you know, the LA Film Fest or AFI or any of the other ones that are in town with a film like mine that has no stars, I think it's fantastically well made, but they're just, you know, you're not going to recognize any of the people in the film. They're amazing actors, but you don't know who they are. The likelihood of getting into one of those festivals is just so slim that it's almost not even worthwhile. And so when I got Dances with Films recommended to me, I did my research. I looked them up. I saw like kinds of movies they were playing, and I saw how fantastic of a festival they put on. They've been around for 16 years now. They've got, you know, I mean, they've got it down. They've got the process down. You know, they've figured it out, and they treat filmmakers right. I mean, it's one of those things where they care. They actually care about the filmmakers. It's not just about putting butts in seats. It's trying to support filmmakers to forward their film and to forward their careers. And that's not something that every film festival actually does. So it's a fantastic event to submit to. Not above and beyond all that, I mean, now they're screening movies at the Chinese theaters on Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, how cool is that? For a filmmaker to say, this, for us, was our world premiere. And not only did it just happen to be the first festival in the line of festivals we were submitting to based on when we finished it, but also to say that we had, you know, our world premiere of our film at the Chinese theaters on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles. I mean, how many people get to say that?
Just the people that they picked at the theater.
That's exactly right.
But
so it was fantastic. I mean, you know, talk about, you know, wonderful benefits on all sides, on every side of the equation. They're just do a fantastic job of it.
I want to thank you very much for coming in and chatting with us about it. I mean, it's a lot of information, but a lot of good information from a lot of really different perspectives as well. I mean, you come from the business world, obviously, of making films, you know, live production as well, you know, music videos and stuff like that. Switching gears over into actual filmmaking, narrative filmmaking. You did a feature. You got into a film festival in Hollywood, Dances with Films, and but having the foreknowledge of how to go about that is, I think, critical, and really it's really interesting. And I'm sure, you know, as you move along in other film festivals, other filmmakers who hopefully will see this will, you know, probably pick your brain even far longer than I did. So I want to thank you for coming in and talking with us.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.